What is normal?
In India, dhanda is dhanda. Having women of all sizes and, all colors.
Why is no one else doing this? But I can't imagine like knocking on their door and being like, oh, like this is my idea and concept, can you help me?
We're job creators. Their life is worth something.
There are a lot of people who want to see this idea work.
You met your mentor at a party.
So you're giving back while making money.
I'm not BCG. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Found Hers podcast series. Today we thought we should give back a little, and with that I have my guest for today, which is Nikita Kapoor, the founder of Sketch. Hi Nikita, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi Hina, thanks for having me.
So why don't we start with a 1-minute pitch about what is Sketch really about?
So Sketch is a social enterprise that empowers children with autism and Down syndrome by using their artwork to design apparel and corporate gift products.
Wow.
So the cape you see here is actually, it features art. So the drawings you see, it features art made by Nicole Schroff, an artist with autism. And this bottle, the print on it is made by Akanksha Mathur, an artist with autism as well.
You mentioned this term social entrepreneurship, and I think people are really confused. What is social service? What is social entrepreneurship? Because social as a word means giving back, and entrepreneurship as a word means making money.
Absolutely.
So how did you marry the two, and what does social entrepreneurship really mean?
I think you explained it amazingly yourself. It's exactly what you said. Put those two things together. So you're giving back while making money. Essentially, it's a business like any other business, but the core activity or the core purpose is a social impact related concept.
Okay.
Two examples. One is, of course, what I'm doing, where it's like a brand like any other brand. Like you would buy apparel from another brand, you can buy it from Sketch. But the difference here is, of course, anything you buy, the art on that product is made by a child with autism and Down syndrome. And those children make money, anytime something with their design is purchased. So, of course, that's where the social impact concept comes into what I'm doing. Similarly, there's a brand called Tom's Shoes, where they have a one-for-one concept. So anytime you buy a pair of Tom's shoes, one pair of shoes is donated to an underprivileged child who can't afford it. So this is how, normal mainstream businesses can become social businesses, by just incorporating a concept of giving back in the core of what they're doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think what you mentioned about Tom's, I do see that with a lot of businesses now.
Yes.
I mean, it comes, sustainable brands also do it, where you see that, in case you're purchasing, I'm going to plant a tree.
Absolutely.
So kind of giving back in that perspective. But what I really like about what you are building and what you are doing is that it's not just taking 2 to 2 or giving somebody something. You're letting that child actually feel like their life is worth something. Back in the day, I've always been really involved with social service since a kid because of my parents. And first it was, road track clubs. Then you had enactors that kind of came. We moved into this entire segment of working. And at that time, it's just that one Sunday that I may be giving to the kids, or the one, maybe 2-3 times a week. So can I understand a little bit more of, how is it working with kids with Down syndrome and autism? I'm sure when you're looking at a business, right, it's like producing your goods on a much more daily basis. You're always looking at inventory, how to increase my inventory, how to ensure that my MOQs increase.
Oh God.
I think these words are very, very jarring.
Words.
Yeah. So how do you do that? Because you can't really go to the kids and be like, okay, I have an MOQ, I have a deadline, like pick up the pace, because they're also taking their own time. So how do you manage and balance this out?
So that's a very good question. What's unique about what I'm doing, if I may say so myself, is that the product, like the manufacturing, everything is done by, skilled workers and laborers and manufacturers, who specialize in these categories. So the apparel is made by, a fashion factory. Then the bottles are made by, a copper factory. So that way the product, and that's what we're trying to build, a brand where us being a social brand doesn't hamper the quality or the efficiency of what we're trying to deliver to you. And that's why I wanted to marry what the NGO is really good at, or what the artists can do, which is make the artwork. So a lot of time the artwork I'm taking isn't also something that I'm like, oh, somebody wants something, so suddenly make a drawing and give it to me. This
Okay.
is art that they're anyway doing as part of their day-to-day life and activities. So a lot of these children, are part of art therapy classes. So they make paintings and drawings on a regular basis. A lot of the artwork I have, like this, the art on this bottle is something that a child made like 3-4 years ago. They just never did anything
Oh,
with it.
wow.
So I'm like sort of repurposing it in that sense. So I guess what's important for people to understand, and anyone who wants to, take on this sort of initiative in the future, find out what the children you're working with are actually capable of and what they're actually really good at, and then, find a way to fill the other gaps by people who are great at those other things.
I mean, in the era where we're told to repurpose content, you're repurposing someone's art
Art.
that's there. So I think that's very thoughtful and it's a good strategy, right? You're not trying to pressure them. It's something that they've already created and you're just adapting it to the right places. I think I want to now get into a little bit of the business side of, your venture. Apparel is very competitive. It's a very different segment, and so is corporate gifting. I have to say this because most of my clients are D2C brands, and while D2C is great, you need a B2B funnel to fund it.
Yes.
But these are very different industries, very different audience segments, because one is D2C where you need to be appealing, you need to be with the right influencers, celebrities. It needs to look like, it's eye-catching so that people want to purchase it. And while on the other hand, corporate gifting, it's a very different approach. It's more of like
100%.
what best you can give me at this cost. So why don't you tell us as to which industry firstly did you start with, and how did you make this shift, and how are you dealing with two different segments of audiences?
At the time, I was like, okay, how do I make this artwork which represents the skill set of these artists? You ask people where they bought what they're wearing,
Right.
And of course, fashion is like a, way to express yourself. So I think if you wear something where, oh, this art was made by a child with autism or Down syndrome, that's something that also talks about your own personal identity and the fact that you want to rep it in that sense,
Nice,
So I
yeah.
think that was the thought behind it. But I really wasn't aware of how much it would take to actually grow and build an apparel brand in,
Right.
the D2C sort of way. And as a result of that, I said, okay, fine. Now I need, like you called it rightly, the B2B funnel. Like, you need
Yeah.
something that's actually bringing in revenue to continuously support the brand and the activities and support these kids. Like, how can I create this, like, in a way that's beneficial to corporates?
Nice.
Keeping, let's say, CSR out of it, because you can't donate money to me. I'm not an NGO. And that's where this whole thing of corporate gifting came about. So I've always wanted to do more than just clothes when it came to this artwork and expand the product portfolio. Like I always thought as a D2C brand, tomorrow I'd want to be a brand where somebody can buy bottles, buy books, buy stationery, buy everything with this print on it. Like, why
Yeah.
not? But of course it's so, you can just keep dreaming, but it takes time to get there. So with B2B, because there isn't like inventory, at least that's the way we're operating.
Yeah.
Whatever somebody wants today, we can put the print on it. I work with experienced partners who are manufacturing these items in large quantities.
Okay.
At a very good quality, and then competitive prices to be able to compete with, like you said, what B2B demands in that sense.
That's interesting. I would term this as a problem solver, because everything that
Yeah.
you mentioned, you went through and you found a problem and you're like, okay, if this is not going to work, how
What
else?
will?
Navigating vendors would have been a challenge, so to say, because, how do you trust somebody knowing that they're going to do the best job? How did you find these vendors? And more importantly, in India, dhanda is dhanda. Like, that's
Absolutely.
as honest I can put it out, right? So when they see you with a social cause, and obviously you have to negotiate and get a rate that's within the profit you're getting, not taking out of what the kid is getting. So do they really understand this concept, or again, they take it as social service? And have you faced any such backlashes while you've navigated for vendors?
B2B. So B2B is like a whole different game.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they heard about this pivot or expansion to B2B, they were like, this is not your cup of tea. We know how you are as a person. And I think a lot of the success of what I was doing prior to that, success, if I may call it, but I just mean like even the little growth that the D2C side had was because I I think as a personality, I had like that softer touch where people were able to link me and how I am with, okay, helping kids and supporting this brand. Whereas on the B2B side, you have to be like a completely different person, like you said, right? You
Yeah.
can't go to a vendor and say, oh, I'm helping children. And while that's how I used to do it, because even for D2C, I used to work with different like apparel factories and things like that.
Okay.
I realized the hard way that all of that and getting that sort of sympathy factor and stuff is not going to get me anywhere, because then you're sort of pitching your concept to a vendor and a supplier and being like, oh, please work with me because this is the ultimate good
cause,
that will
yeah.
come from it.
Yeah.
And I think it took a few experiences where I realized that, okay, I'm, losing a lot of like respect in that thing, and I'm feeling like they're doing me a favor and helping me out, which isn't the way it's supposed to work, And a lot of people will be like, yeah, why did you even think like that in the first place? But I was, like I said, lack of experience and exposure. So I learned the hard way that, okay, with the supply side, it's a business transaction. And I don't know if I'm the best person to take that forward, but so far, touch wood, I think I've learned a lot of skills and been able to navigate a lot of
Can you tell me like 2, 3 skills that you feel like
Of
founders
course.
need to know before they get into B2B?
Of course. So I feel like in this B2B space, at no point when I've said, okay, I need like 500, 600,000 copper bottles with this enamel print, have I said the print is made by children with autism and Down syndrome? Because in my head, it's like, okay, that should not be relevant. If I was a supplier to somebody, I would want to give them the best product, regardless of is it for a good cause or bad cause. Because I know, like, that should only help, but that's not, how I want to actually find the right partner to work
Yeah.
with. So I feel like that was one big thing where, like, you keep your cards close to your chest and just see finally, like, who's willing to give this to you at the best price, best quality, best timeline. For example, there was some of the goods that had to, I'll just give you an example of
Yeah.
like the complicated network. So I'm representing the artists and I have the artwork. The customer is sitting across different offices where they need things delivered. So 500 in Gurgaon, 500 in Bangalore.
Yeah.
My vendor, which is a product who's making the final product, could be sitting, I think some of the products were coming from Trichy, some of the products were coming from Mumbai. And you have to deal with everybody on the supply side and navigate how to get all of this together to the right people on time across different cities as just one person, who's navigating
Yeah.
this entire thing. So I feel like, and this is just one order, right? I had 3 orders at the same, which coincidentally had like the same delivery timelines. It all ended
my
up
God.
clashing together. So I think I realized the challenge of what this would take like the hard way. But it was really good because I remember like speaking to my mentor who said, okay, this was a great test for you to see whether or not you want to take on this journey of B2B.
Nice.
Because what happens with D2C is also finally that whole satisfaction, a customer receives your product, they've got the whole unboxing experience, and you get a message sometimes immediately saying, this is how we felt about it, thank you, we love it. In B2B, it's very transactional.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
A
true.
lot of times, like the buyer, I remember y'all did a thing on this, right? Like the person who's buying the product is not often the end user of the
Yes.
product. In B2B, is just that.
So are you going to continue in B2B?
100%. And I'll be coming to you saying, Heenal, I need to do corporate gifting.
So coming to, I know we are like on the borderline of millennial and Gen Zs, so to say, but coming to the youth of today, like how have you seen them take a social entrepreneurship venture? Are you seeing more such ventures come into the industry, creep in after, especially since you started something like this?
So I think my personal experience has been that our sort of generation wants to give back and do, something different. I think COVID has brought about a general change in the way people are thinking about life, I would say. I think in a small way, I'd like to believe that I've prompted people to sort of think that way. And it's just only going to be a snowball effect. Like each person who does something like this, the more we can normalize it, and the more we can actually make it cool, if that's like the right word to use, so that because we're going to be the leaders of tomorrow. So that's
Yeah.
why my target audience when I launched the apparel was young people like you and me, because even though we don't have deep pockets, okay, so are we the ideal customer? Like, that was a question I used to get asked a lot. These are the people I want to make aware of, the concept and all these things, because then the kids I work with tomorrow, we are the people who can employ them.
Right.
Tomorrow we're going to be running our own restaurants, and we'll be founders of this and that. So it's very important that we start thinking about these things now, so that tomorrow when we're in positions of power and able to make a difference, we can actually be more inclusive.
Yeah, I think that's a very impactful message, and I think you hit it right when our generation is all about starting out. There's so many, like, we're job creators.
Yes, exactly.
Something that I used to hear in college, like we're becoming job creators, and why not create it for everybody? Coming a little bit onto something that I read on your Instagram when I was getting to know a little bit about your brand, was you put this word out called inclusivity, and don't mind me, but for me, inclusivity, till at least what is going on in current trend, is about having women of all sizes and all colors be a part of your journey, and that's called inclusivity. So what is inclusivity in what you're doing, and what does that term really mean?
Absolutely. So I think the notion of inclusion is still very restricted,
Right.
depending on what it means to the person who's talking about it. So for us as women, women being in positions of power and women getting equal opportunities is something that really means a lot to us.
Yeah.
But actually, inclusion is not just restricted to shape, size, gender, but also neurodiversity. So you and I would be considered neurotypical individuals, but a child with autism or Down syndrome is like neurodiverse in some sense, or disability in general.
Yeah.
Is something that these are people and individuals, and a lot of disabled people today are advocating for themselves and saying that here's what we can do. So one of the pages I love following on Instagram is this couple where one of them is actually blind and the other guy keeps like pranking him. And what we would be like, oh my God, that's horrible.
Yeah.
And it's
How could
just
you
like,
do
why
that?
not? Like, why not?
Maybe you can tell me if I put this out right, but it's mainly inclusive, I think, could be getting everybody who doesn't fit the normal bracket, but they're still a part of our society. So you have to include them irrespective of what the disabilities, deformities, or whatever the changes will be from, like, a normal individual, if we had to put it that way.
Yeah, and I feel like today, if we really think about it, like, what is normal? Like,
Yeah.
I
I think
really,
after COVID, there's no normal.
there's
There's
no
a new normal now.
Yeah, so I think like even when you think about people, it's like, what is normal? Like, so at least I think the work I'm doing has helped me think that way, that there's no normal. Like, everyone has their own uniqueness and identity, and every individual is different. Like, at least that's something that I've started to view things with that lens, and I would encourage more people to do the same, where every individual is different. You and I have different strengths, different weaknesses, and that's the same for even, children with autism, Down syndrome. And what's important is to identify what those strengths are and actually leverage them like you would in any other thing.
Out of super curiosity, because when you look at founders, especially women founders, and this podcast is all about it, finding a gap in the industry is really difficult.
Right.
Like Zomatos and Swiggies and Zeptos kind of found a gap and created something. How did you, find a gap, and what was that journey as a founder, doing something that's not being done in the industry? So I'm sure it was difficult to put the narrative out as well. Doesn't matter, even though we're so digitally active. But how was that for you, and how did you identify this gap and the initial struggles? Can you tell us a little about that?
So that's a very, very valid question. It's a question that I think my dad first asked me, saying that if no one else is doing what you're doing, there's probably a reason. So I feel like there's a reason why not too many people, at least at our age and stage, were sort of setting out on this journey. And of course, the very common notion that, okay, giving back and philanthropy is something you can do at a later stage in your life. But a very big challenge is that when you don't have somebody or a business that's, like a few stages further than where
Yeah.
you are, or successful in the same demographic and geography as you are, which was the case with me. Like I'm talking about Tom's, which is a different model
Yeah.
happening somewhere else. There's no real roadmap to follow. So that was one very big challenge. And the second thing is, of course, constantly having people second guess you. And like I said, of course, it's coming from a good place, but it's like, why is no one else doing this? You know, trying to, and I still today, I think I'm trying to believe in myself and like focus on the people who really do see merit in this. And, you know, hopefully I'll be the first mover in a space that does grow over time.
So you mentioned one aspect where there's no real roadmap.
Yes.
So how are you planning your roadmap? And obviously you started young, directly out of college. So you've also had to learn a lot of business yourself. So firstly, let me ask you, like, do you come from a business background?
No, I don't.
Oh,
Yeah.
so then tell me, how have you navigated and made your roadmap? And it's been how many years to sketch now, I think?
It's been about 2.5 years.
Wow,
Yeah.
so that's quite a long period. So, how are you planning this roadmap for your business?
So I am somebody who literally, it's like, okay, just jump into the deep and then figure out how to swim. That's not how most people do business. That's not how most people do most things. But I think having age on my side, I was like, I don't know if this concept is going to work, but let me just put it out there. So in terms of what you mentioned from a business background, I studied business management, in my undergrad. But I think business is something that you imbibe all through your life. And I didn't have that. That's what I meant when I said no. Like my dad was, in the corporate space.
Okay.
And my mom was a social worker, so that way I didn't have all these tips, tricks and tools that a lot of people just grow up with.
Yeah.
So I think I saw things from a very different lens. So that is in itself, if I was just running a regular business, I feel like I would have anyway so many challenges. And then I chose, to start a social business. And one thing that's really helped me is, reaching out and networking with as many people as I can. And most recently, I've actually, found a mentor. I would say I have lots of people who are like mentors and who've been like just check in with me every week and every month, and I'll be happy to, all my resources are at your disposal. But I have one mentor who's very, very successful in the D2C space.
Oh, wow.
And he actually loved my concept, and we got talking very informally at a party. And he was like, I just love the thought behind what you're doing, and let's help, make this into like a proper successful business. So I think that's been a big turning point, because we don't have the experience today. Like, I don't have the experience to know exactly what steps will take me where I want to go.
My first most important question to you is, you met your mentor at a party and the fact that you have a mentor. As you know, starting I'm trying to build a consultancy for founders, and I think I've always told you this, that I'm trying to build my niche. So a lot of the things that you said are very relatable, because there's no such roadmap per se, because I'm trying to build something unique. And when I go through that journey, right, and when I started initially speaking to founders, they were like, consultants, mentors, like, I mean, like, I don't have that money. Like, I mean, and I was like, but I'm not BCG. Like, I'm not at that level. I'm just consulting you using data and facts that are there already in, in the industry. So, when I initially started, it was so difficult to explain to people the fact that having a consultant can actually be a catalyst in your journey of starting out. So, as a founder, and very, very personal to your journey, why did you decide to find a mentor? Was it always a part of your plan, or it just happened through a connection? And how has that journey been, having a mentor? Because I think it's crucial for founders to know that if you need the help, you can get it. There are people who actually want to help you through a mentorship or a consultancy program. So, like, how has that been for you?
So it happened a bit it was unplanned.
Okay.
It was something that I think my dad, in credit to him, kept saying that I'm not fully equipped to guide you, because as I mentioned, he was very successful in his corporate career, but it's completely different to start a business from scratch where it's your own resources, etc. So I think he identified that very early on and said, I'm not the best person to help guide you. Mom isn't. Who is? And at the time, I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's as easy as that. You know, like we know so many people, but I can't imagine like knocking on their door and being like, oh, like this is my idea and concept. Can you help me?
Yeah.
So I think I was very reluctant to like, and like you're saying, most people are. I was that person until very recently where I was like, what is a consultant going to do? What is a
Yeah.
mentor going to do? I mean, I have to go through this journey on my own and I'll figure things out, learn along the way. Uh, we met at a party because it was, of course, they were family friends. And so we somehow just got talking. And I didn't actually start the conversation, and neither was I talking with the intention of anything happening. This was like literally a family friend who was like, so what are you doing with your life now? I think we've all been there, you know? And I was
we
just
get that question asked
all
at
the
every
time.
family event.
Yeah, exactly. All the time. This is something we're trained to answer literally for years. So I just started talking, and then I was very fortunate that he insisted that I come to his office and meet him, you know.
Okay.
So I feel like if a year, 2 years ago, I had actually said, listen to my dad and been like, okay, let me think about the people who we know or even don't know who might be interested in helping me, it would have saved me a lot of pain and time. And I think having a mentor or consultants doesn't like solve everything.
Yeah.
You just feel like, okay, anytime you're in a difficult situation or you have to make a decision that you don't know if you're making the right one, it just helps to have someone qualified and experienced more than anything
Yeah.
to help you navigate how you've at least arrived at that conclusion. So my mentor today doesn't solve problems for me or answer questions for me, because it's not like he hasn't done what I've done either. Right? His experience lies in a similar, but still very different space.
Because I truly believe in the power of networking. Today, wherever I am, it's because I just showed up for networking events and I would just talk to any and everybody. They may not be my TG, but I've actually ended up working through and through on projects because I just happened to connect with them. So I think the power of networking is huge. And I feel like whoever's starting out should kind of, like we discussed a lot in this conversation, that Indians require still a lot of learning into this space so that they're able to understand the cause. And we Indians are often influenced by our movies, as we very
course.
popularly know it. So I read that Kareena Kapoor was entitled as the brand ambassador for UNICEF. So how does that play a role, that you have a public icon actually representing something in the social space? And have you seen any sort of change in the market after you've had like Priyanka Chopra as well as Kareena Kapoor be in these spaces and they're loved by everybody? So how is that for you, and do you think more public icons are getting more involved in this space?
Like you rightly said, like India is almost synonymous with Bollywood,
Yeah.
in some sense. And I think it's very important that people who belong to the industry get involved, because they should recognize the influence they have on people. And it's great that that is being recognized, and thus they're taking steps to publicly associate with causes, associate with doing good, because that'll influence other people to do it. If not for the reason of just giving back, even if someone, let's say, partakes in like giving back activity because someone they really respect and admire is doing it, that's good enough. Like the objective is met. So I think it's very important. And the person who actually comes to my mind is Mr. Sonu Sood. So during COVID, he was literally
Yeah.
considered the knight in shining armor. And I think he proved that even though there's so many restrictions, you can still do a lot. And he
Yeah.
used all the resources at his disposal to get people home and help people. And I think his work continues. But I do have to say that there are a lot of people who prefer doing their, philanthropic, giving back stuff privately. And that's also admirable as well, as long as they're doing it. But it would never harm to be public about it. And for me personally, so I have had the opportunity to collaborate with Mr. Sonu Sood and Karishma Kapoor.
Oh, wow.
Because family friends actually, when they saw my product, they were like, oh, we know these people personally. We love to gift it to them and let them, post about it. And it was really nice, because for me, it was like, wow, like that would be amazing. Of course,
I would
please,
be in awe.
This was exactly when I just initially started out. And it was wonderful because it just took for someone to say this is what the brand does, and I was a nobody. My brand is still very small, you can imagine, a few years ago, and they put up a thing on their social media. Now why they did it, or a lot of people were like, it makes them look good as well. That's the advantage you have about your brand. Like, fair enough, but like, it's great that they did it, and more people should continue.
So I think it was a very interesting conversation to know about Sketch and know about what your journey was. Now I'm going to play a little fun segment to get to know you, the founder behind Sketch.
Oh, no.
So it's a rapid
Okay.
fire. I'm sure we spoke about Bollywood, so really taking from Coffee with Karan. But this is to get to know you as a founder, because I think women need to know, right? What is it to be a social founder yourself? Very generic questions, extremely personal. Let
Oh,
me know
no.
what your answers are, and let's keep it short. So just one word answers only. Okay? Are you
Okay.
ready?
As ready as I'll ever be. So,
Okay. What is the secret talent you didn't expect from the kids that you saw when you first started out?
I think dancing.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
interesting. What is the biggest business lesson you've learned the hard way?
Negotiation is everywhere.
Okay. What is the biggest perk of being a social entrepreneur?
Being your own boss.
Okay. What do you do when you need some quiet time to get into your creative space? Is it music on or just some quiet and a candle?
Music.
Okay. Messy studio or an organized workplace? What would you pick?
I want to be organized, but it's always messy.
Okay. What is your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Watch something on Netflix.
Okay. Are you a workaholic or do you believe in work-life balance?
No balance whatsoever. Yeah.
We are workaholics when we start. Who is your dream ambassador for Sketch?
Sonu Sood.
Oh, wow. And you got him. So that's great. What is the first thing you do when you hit a creative block?
I think visit the NGO. I always draw inspiration from the kids.
Nice. Can you tell us 3 tips or 3 skills that somebody who's wanting to start in this journey of social entrepreneurship that they should have inculcated to make them stronger?
Reach out to as many people as you can. Don't hesitate to ask for help. And do your research.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
think
you.
this was a very, I would say, inspiring episode to see you kind of build something in a space which is not that well known, but you're so motivated and you're so, aligned to your cause. You didn't let any change in your business kind of dear you away from your cause. So thank you for that. And, this entire episode is known as Found Hers. We particularly named it that way because we want women founders to get more into different industries and spaces, and we believe that each one of them is finding something. So what is Nikita Kapoor finding?
Firstly, thank you for your kind words, and I'm still trying. I think, there's a long way to go. I think I'm still finding my purpose. This is very close to it, but I think that journey will continue.
Okay.
So,
That's really interesting. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your insights.
thank you.